What happens when a man who vanished from Hollywood's spotlight for nearly a decade sits under the unforgiving studio lights of daytime television and is asked to relive the moment that broke him? What happens when the past refuses to stay buried, when the applause fades, and the truth starts pressing against the ribs like it needs air? Before we go any further, if you love cinematic, emotional deep dives into shocking celebrity moments, subscribe to Stage View right now. Like this video, drop a comment, and stay with us, because this story doesn't blink. The applause begins before Brendan Fraser even reaches the couch. It rolls toward him like a wave, polite at first, then swelling, then standing. The View audience is on its feet. Some are smiling. Some are crying already, as if they've been waiting years for this exact moment. Brendan nods, a soft, almost embarrassed smile on his face, one hand lifted in a quiet thank you. His shoulders are broad, but the man inside them looks careful, like someone stepping onto thin ice. Joy Behar leans forward, clapping a beat longer than the others. Whoopi Goldberg watches him closely, eyes warm, assessing. Sunny Hostin tilts her head, curious. The camera zooms in as Brendan sits, adjusting his jacket, exhaling through his nose. There's a tremor there. Small, almost invisible, but it's there. "Welcome back," Joy says, her voice bright but steady. "It's really good to see you." "Thank you," Brendan replies. His voice is gentle, slightly husky. It's good to be here." The crowd applauds again. Brendan blinks, overwhelmed by it, by the fact that they're clapping for him, still. After everything. After all those years when no one was calling. Joy folds her cue cards, sets them aside. This is already off script. Everyone in the studio can feel it. The producers in the control room straighten in their chairs. Joy says, people don't just love you because of the movies. They love you because you feel human. And for a long time, people didn't see you. A pause. Brendan's smile tightens. He nods once. His eyes flick down, then back up. The air changes. It thickens. "I disappeared," he says quietly. Yeah, the word lands heavier than it should. Disappeared. Like a magic trick gone wrong. Like a man folded into himself. Joy watches him carefully. She's done thousands of interviews. She knows when a guest is cruising, when they're deflecting, when they're about to crack. This is the third thing. "You disappeared," she repeats, softer now. And people wondered why. The audience hushes. Even the shuffling stops. Brendan's hands are clasped together, fingers interlocked so tightly his knuckles pale. "There were a lot of reasons," he says. "Some physical, some personal." Whoopi shifts slightly, sensing the direction. Sunny glances at Joy. This wasn't supposed to go here yet. Joy inhales. When she speaks again, her tone is still gentle, but there's steel underneath. "You once said that something happened to you that changed everything. That made you pull back. Do you want to talk about that?" The question hangs in the air like a held breath. Brendan doesn't answer right away. He swallows. His eyes glisten, not dramatically, not performatively. Just enough that the camera catches it. He presses his lips together, as if deciding whether to open a door he spent years barricading. "I didn't think," he says slowly, "that I would ever talk about it on a couch like this." A nervous ripple of laughter moves through the audience, then dies quickly. This isn't funny. Everyone knows it. Joy doesn't interrupt. She lets the silence do the work. "There was a moment," Brendan continues, "where I realized I wasn't safe in a place I thought I was. And when that happens," he trails off. His shoulders rise, then fall. "It rewires you." The studio is silent now. No applause. No murmurs. Even the co-hosts are frozen. Joy nods. "People don't understand how that kind of moment follows you," she says. "Especially when you're a man. Especially in this industry." Something shifts in Brendan's expression at that. Gratitude, maybe. Or relief. "For a long time," he says, "I thought it was my fault. That I'd done something wrong. That speaking up would end everything." His voice wavers on the last word. End everything. The audience exhales collectively. A woman in the front row wipes her eyes. Someone whispers, "Oh my God." Joy leans back slightly, but her eyes never leave his. "And did it?" she asks. "Did it end everything?" Brendan lets out a breath that sounds like a laugh, but isn't. It felt like it did. There it is. The truth without decoration. The pain without a soundtrack. The camera cuts to Whoopi, who nods slowly, knowingly. Cuts back to Joy, whose mouth is set in a thin line now. Joy says, and there's a flash of anger under her humor. People love to pretend Hollywood is all glamour. but it can chew you up and then act surprised when you disappear. A low murmur of agreement ripples through the crowd. Brendan looks at her, eyes shining. I thought if I just stayed quiet, it would go away. But it doesn't. It sits with you. Every audition. Every phone call that doesn't come. The tension is thick enough to touch. The producers are definitely off script now. Graphics are forgotten. Commercial breaks pushed. Sonny finally speaks carefully. Brendan, when you were away, did you think you'd ever come back? He hesitates, then shakes his head. No, he says. I thought my story was done. The words hit hard. Done. Finished. Over. Joy's voice softens again. And yet here you are. Another pause. This one feels different. Hopeful. Fragile. Brendan smiles through the emotion. Yeah, he whispers. Here I am. The audience erupts into applause, louder this time, rawer. It's not polite clapping. It's a release. But Joy isn't done. She glances down for a split second, then back up. When she speaks again, there's a question behind the question. When people see you now, when they celebrate this comeback, what do you want them to understand about that time? Brendan's smile fades. He takes a breath that visibly steadies him. I want them to know, he says, that disappearing doesn't mean you stopped trying. Sometimes it means you were trying to survive. The words land like a punch to the chest. The camera catches Joy blinking rapidly. For just a second, her professional armor slips. That, she says quietly, is something a lot of people need to hear. The applause returns, but softer. Reverent. And as Brendan nods, as the lights burn hot above them and millions watch from their living rooms, there's a sense that something irreversible has begun. Not a comeback tour. Not a viral moment. A reckoning. Because this isn't just about where Brendan Fraser went. It's about why he left. And in this studio, on this couch, with Joy Behar leaning in and the audience holding its breath, the past is no longer willing to stay quiet. The applause fades, but the silence that replaces it is heavier than anything that came before. Brendan Fraser sits back against the couch, as if the weight of what he said has finally caught up to him. His chest rises and falls slowly. The cameras stay close. No one wants to miss a single flicker of emotion now. Joy Behar clears her throat, and for the first time since the interview began, she looks careful. She says, trying to steady the room, when you say something like that about surviving, it opens a door. And once it's open, people want to know what was on the other side. Brendan nods. He expected this. Maybe feared it. Maybe needed it. There are parts of it, he says, choosing each word like it could cut him, that I still don't know how to say out loud. The audience leans in. Even the people at home feel it. That sense that the next sentence could tilt everything. Whoopi finally speaks again, her voice low, grounding. Take your time. Nobody's rushing you. Brendan offers her a grateful glance. Then his eyes drift back to Joy. There's something unspoken between them now. An understanding that Joy is going to push, but she's not going to shove. For years, Brendan says, I carried this belief that if I acknowledged what happened, it would define me. That I'd only ever be that guy, the one something bad happened to. Joy nods slowly. Hollywood loves labels, she says. And it loves putting people in boxes they didn't ask for. A few knowing chuckles ripple through the audience, but they're uneasy. And I was afraid, Brendan continues, that if I spoke up, the box would close. Forever. Sonny's brows knit together. So you stayed silent? Yes, Brendan says simply. For a long time. Joy shifts, crossing one leg over the other. Can I ask you something, and you tell me if it's too much? Brendan exhales. Okay. When you finally realized the silence was hurting you more than the truth, what did that feel like? The question cuts deep. Brendan's jaw tightens. He looks straight ahead, past the cameras, past the lights, as if he's staring down a hallway only he can see. It felt like drowning, he says. Quietly, from the inside. A murmur runs through the crowd. Someone gasps. Joy's eyes widen just a fraction. I would wake up, he continues, and my body would feel heavy, like it didn't belong to me. I'd tell myself, just get through today. And then the next day. And the next. Whoopi shakes her head slowly. That's not living, she says. No, Brendan agrees. It's existing. Joy leans forward now, elbows resting lightly on her knees. And when you did start to talk, when you told people close to you, did they believe you? There it is. The question that makes Brendan hesitate again. Some did, he says carefully. Some didn't know what to say. And some, he trails off. Joy doesn't let the silence linger too long this time. And some made it harder. Brendan looks at her, surprised by the directness. Then he nods. Yeah, he says. Some made it harder. The audience reacts audibly now. Soft boos, murmurs of disbelief. Joy raises a hand slightly, calming them. That's the part that makes people angry, she says. Because when someone finally finds the courage to speak, the last thing they need is doubt. Brendan's eyes shine again. Doubt can feel like another kind of silence. That line lands hard. You can almost feel it ripple outward, into living rooms, into people who've lived versions of that same story. Sunny leans in. Did you ever feel like the industry turned its back on you? Brendan gives a small, sad smile. I felt like I turned invisible. Joy lets out a sharp breath. That might be worse. It is, Brendan says quietly, because you start wondering if you were ever really seen at all. The camera cuts to the audience. Faces tight with emotion. A man nodding slowly. A woman pressing her hand to her mouth. Joy sits back again, and for a moment, her trademark humor flickers at the edge of her expression, then disappears. You know, she says, I've been doing this a long time. I've seen people fall out of favor, fall out of headlines. But what you're describing, that's not a career slump. That's a human being left alone. Brendan swallows hard. It felt that way. Another pause. The tension is no longer just about what Brendan has said, but about what he hasn't. Joy glances briefly at Whoopi, then back at him. When she speaks again, her voice is softer, but the question is sharper. Do you think people are uncomfortable with your story because it challenges how they see power? The room seems to shrink. Brendan doesn't answer immediately. His fingers tighten together again. When he finally speaks, it's barely above a whisper. I think, he says, people like to believe that bad things only happen in certain ways. To certain people. And when that narrative breaks, it scares them. Joy nods slowly. Because then they have to admit it could happen anywhere. Yes, Brendan says. And to anyone. The audience reacts more strongly now. Applause breaks out. Not celebratory, but affirming. Like people are clapping to say, we hear you. Joy waits for it to die down. When it does, she asks, when you watch old clips of yourself back when everything was loud and fast, do you recognize that man? Brendan smiles faintly. Sometimes. And sometimes he feels like a character I played, he admits. Not someone I was allowed to keep being. Joy's lips part slightly. That's heartbreaking. It was confusing, Brendan says. Because the world thought I was doing great. And inside, I was unraveling. Whoopi speaks up again, her voice firm. That disconnect, that's where people get lost. Brendan nods. Exactly. Joy's gaze sharpens. And now that you're back, now that people are celebrating you again, does any part of you feel angry? The question is unexpected. The audience reacts with a low ooh. Brendan blinks, caught off guard. He considers it honestly. Yes, he says. A little. Joy doesn't flinch. About what? About how long it took, Brendan says. About how quiet it was when I needed noise. About how loud it is now. The crowd murmurs. Joy gives a short, humorless laugh. That'll do it. But, Brendan adds quickly, I'm trying not to live there. Anger can be a place you visit, but you can't make it home. Joy smiles at that, genuinely this time. That's very wise. The interview feels like it's reached a peak. But there's an undercurrent, a sense that something sharper is still coming. Joy glances down at her cards again, then sets them aside for good. There's one more thing, she says. And I'm asking this not as a host, but as someone who's watched this industry chew people up. The studio holds its breath. When you look back at that version of yourself, the one who went quiet, what would you say to him now? Brendan's eyes fill instantly. He doesn't try to stop it. I'd tell him, he says, voice breaking, that it wasn't his fault, that he wasn't weak, that surviving doesn't make you less of who you are. It proves how strong you were. Tears spill over now. Brendan wipes at them quickly, apologetically. The audience stands again. This time, the applause is thunderous. Some are crying openly. Even Sunny dabs at her eyes. Joy is visibly moved. She waits, letting the moment breathe. Then she speaks, her voice thick. Thank you for trusting us with that. Brendan nods, unable to speak for a moment. But as the applause continues, as the cameras pull back just slightly, there's a feeling in the room that this story is no longer just Brendan's. It's touching something deeper, something unresolved. And somewhere beneath the warmth, beneath the standing ovation, a harder question is forming. One that won't stay buried much longer. Because when the truth finally comes into the light, it doesn't just heal. It demands answers. The standing ovation slowly settles, but the energy in the studio doesn't return to normal. It can't. Something fundamental has shifted. Brendan Fraser sits back down, his breathing uneven, eyes still wet. He nods toward the audience, grateful, overwhelmed, almost stunned by how openly they've received him. Joy Behar lets the applause fade on its own. She doesn't rush it. She knows moments like this don't happen often. And when they do, you don't interrupt them. When the room finally quiets, Joy speaks again, and her voice carries a different weight now. Less host, more witness. You know, she says, when people hear stories like yours, they often ask, why didn't he say something sooner? A few groans ripple through the audience. Brendan exhales slowly. That question, he says, used to haunt me. Joy tilts her head. What do you mean? It played on a loop, Brendan replies. In my head. In other people's mouths. Like there was a right timeline for pain. Like if you miss the window, it doesn't count. Sunny nods sharply. As if trauma runs on a schedule. Exactly, Brendan says. And when you don't speak right away, people start rewriting the story for you. Joy's jaw tightens. They decide who you are. What you should have done. How strong you should have been. Brendan looks at her, surprised again by how closely she's tracking him. Yes, he says. That's exactly it. Whoopi leans back, arms crossed, voice steady but firm. People forget that fear is loud. It tells you to sit down, to shut up, to protect what little you think you still have. Brendan nods, grateful. Fear convinced me that silence was safety. Joy raises an eyebrow slightly. And was it? Brendan lets out a breath that almost sounds like a sigh of relief. No, he says. It was isolation. The word lands hard. Joy sits forward again. There's another layer here, she says. And I want to talk about it, because people at home are thinking it. The audience shifts. This is the edge. Everyone feels it. You're a man, Joy continues. A leading man. Big roles. Action movies. People don't expect vulnerability from that image. Brendan's lips press together. He nods once. They expect strength, Joy says. But only one kind. Yes, Brendan replies. The kind that doesn't shake. Doesn't cry. Doesn't admit fear. Sunny interjects. And when you break that expectation, people don't know where to put you. They try to put you nowhere, Brendan says quietly. A sharp murmur ripples through the crowd. Someone mutters, that's true. Joy's expression hardens, not at Brendan, but at the idea itself. Do you think that played a role in how your story was received? Brendan thinks for a moment. I think it made people uncomfortable, he says. Because if someone who looks like me can be hurt, then the illusion cracks. Joy nods slowly. Power doesn't like to be questioned. No, Brendan agrees. And neither does silence. The tension in the room spikes again. The conversation has shifted from personal pain to something broader, sharper. Joy glances briefly toward the camera, then back at Brendan. When your name started coming back into conversations, when people rediscovered you, did you trust it? Brendan shakes his head. Not at first. Why not? Because love that disappears once can disappear again, he says. And I wasn't sure I could survive that twice. The audience reacts audibly. A collective ache. Joy's voice softens. So when people started cheering you again, what did that feel like? Brendan's eyes flicker. Confusing, he admits. Gratifying. But also scary. Scary how? Joy presses. Because part of me wondered if they were cheering the comeback, he says, or forgiving the silence. The room goes quiet again. Joy's face stills. That's a heavy thing to carry. Brendan nods. It is. Whoopi leans in slightly. But you didn't owe anyone an explanation, she says. You didn't know the world your pain. Brendan looks at her, deeply moved. Thank you, he says. That took me a long time to understand. Joy inhales, then asks the question that's been circling since the interview began. Do you think the industry owes you anything? The audience collectively reacts, gasps, murmurs, a few sharp intakes of breath. Brendan doesn't rush to answer. When he does, it's measured. I don't know if owe is the word, he says. But I think there's a responsibility. To listen. To protect people instead of protecting reputations. Applause breaks out instantly. Stronger this time. Louder. Joy lets it roll, then raises her hand slightly. And do you feel protected now? She asks. Brendan hesitates. I feel seen, he says. And that's a start. Joy studies him. That hesitation, people notice that. Brendan smiles faintly. Because being seen doesn't automatically mean being safe. The studio feels charged now. This isn't just catharsis, it's confrontation. Joy's voice sharpens just a bit. You know, there are people watching this who are part of your silence. The audience stiffens. There are executives, colleagues, power players, Joy continues. People who benefited from you going quiet. A low murmur ripples across the studio. Brendan's breathing deepens. He nods slowly. I'm aware. Joy meets his eyes. What would you say to them? The question lands like a dropped glass. Brendan looks down at his hands. For a moment, it seems like he might deflect. Then he looks up, eyes steady now, voice calm but resolute. I'd say, he begins, that I'm still here. And so is the truth. The audience erupts. Applause, cheers, a few shouts of yes cut through the air. Joy's mouth curves into a small, fierce smile. That's a powerful thing to say. Brendan nods. It took me a long time to believe it. The cameras pull back slightly, capturing the entire couch now. The hosts, the guests, the audience rising yet again. But beneath the applause, there's an edge. Because this isn't just a redemption story anymore. It's a mirror. And as the lights burn and the applause echoes, one thing becomes clear to everyone watching. This conversation isn't going to end when the credits roll. It's going to follow them out of the studio and straight into the world. The cameras pull back, the applause still crashing against the walls. But something lingers in the air long after the director signals the wrap. Brendan Fraser stands, shaking hands, offering soft smiles, but his eyes are distant, like he's still somewhere inside the conversation, still walking through it step by step. Joy Behar rises too, placing a hand briefly on his arm. It's not for the audience. It's human. Thank you, she says quietly off mic. Really? Brendan nods. Thank you for letting me say it. As he exits the stage, the audience remains standing, some clapping, some frozen, some wiping tears. The applause follows him down the aisle, echoing even as the lights dim. In the control room, producers exchange looks, part awe, part unease. They know what just happened wasn't a segment. It was a moment that doesn't stay contained. Back on the couch, Joy exhales. Well, she says, voice slightly unsteady. That was something. Whoopi nods, eyes still locked on the space where Brendan Saturday. That was truth, she says. And truth doesn't clock out. Sunny adds softly. People are going to feel this. And they do. Within minutes of the episode airing, clips flood social media. Short videos, Brendan's voice breaking. Joy leaning in. The line that gets shared 1,000 times in an hour. Disappearing doesn't mean you stopped trying. Sometimes it means you were trying to survive. The comments explode. I wasn't ready for this. Joy Behar asked the right questions. Brendan Fraser deserved better. I'm crying at 9 a.m. because of The View. What is happening? Hashtags begin trending. His name climbs fast. Not as a meme. Not as nostalgia. As something heavier. Something earned. Entertainment outlets scramble. Headlines blur together, urgent and breathless. A raw reckoning on daytime TV. Brendan Fraser breaks the silence. An interview that changed the room. But alongside the praise, there's discomfort. Think pieces argue over tone. Over timing. Over whether this should have happened on a daytime couch at all. Some voices question the intensity. Others question why it took so long for anyone to ask. Really ask. These questions. And then there are the quieter responses. The ones that don't trend, but matter just as much. Messages pour in from people who see themselves in Brendan's words. Actors, crew members, viewers who never stepped near a soundstage but know what it's like to go quiet to survive. To be doubted, to be unseen. Brendan doesn't comment right away. When he finally does, it's simple. One line. No drama. Thank you for listening. Joy Behar, meanwhile, addresses it the next day, briefly, firmly. Our job isn't just to entertain, she says. Sometimes it's to hold space. And yesterday, that's what we did. The applause is different this time. Less explosive. More grounded. The moment settles into the culture, not fading, not burning out, but sitting there, asking something of the people who watched it. Asking what silence costs. Asking who gets protected. Asking who disappears and why. And for Brendan Fraser, the aftermath isn't closure. It's continuation. Interviews feel different now. Questions are asked with more care. The laughter returns too, slowly, cautiously. Not as a mask, but as a choice. The audience that day will remember the heat of the lights, the hush before the answers, the way the room seemed to lean toward one man telling the truth out loud. Viewers at home will remember where they were when they heard it. What it stirred. What it cracked open. Because some interviews don't end when the screen goes dark. They echo. Now it's your turn. What did you feel watching this moment unfold? Did it change how you see Brendan Fraser, or how you see silence itself? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let your voice be part of the conversation. And if you want more intense, cinematic breakdowns of the moments celebrities can't outrun, subscribe to Stage View right now. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and stay with us, because the stories that shake us the most are the ones that tell the truth.